Space Coconut.
Okay, I'm actually excited for this one, so forgive me if I don't rage at the devs in today's video. Before I get into it, be sure to sub and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any future discussion videos. I stream on Twitch every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, so if you want to chat about anything you see in my videos, be sure to stop by and hang out. Links to everything are in the description. Today, as I write this, we got an update to the upcoming MMR system along with some news that I'm really excited about. If this system is implemented well, which I want to believe since they seem to have tested this algorithm much more than they've ever tested any of the new content patches, that the system will spark a change in the game which will inevitably lead to more balance changes. Of course, there are many people who don't think a system like this is a good idea, but let's rebut a few arguments that they bring up and see if I can't convince you that it's not going to be as bad as we think, as long as the system works well. Argument number 1. A high-skill player will still have the basics of playing killer available to them regardless of the killer they play. This will allow a high-skill killer player to play another killer that they're not good with against lower skill survivors and completely dominate them. This is absolutely true for the first few matches with a different killer. In the announcement, they say by using this new system, we will be able to place players into more balanced matches more often. When a match is unbalanced, the system will know exactly how unbalanced it is and adjust the player ratings accordingly. Let's pretend I have an MMR of 100 as Hag and 5 as Billy. If I use Billy and match up against survivors with an MMR of 5, I will probably stomp them because of the experience I have with other killers. The system will then see that this match I played was exceedingly unbalanced and adjust my score upwards, perhaps 30 to 50. After that first match, I play against another group of survivors with MMR scores of 30 to 50. Depending on how that match turns out, my score will increase or decrease, leading to the third and possibly most accurately balanced matchup for my skill with Hillbilly. Nowhere in this statement does it mention that these scores will decay or reset. I believe that the scores will remain regardless of how long we don't play a given killer. The concern of this situation is real, but the reality is that the system should adjust scores quickly to avoid very many unbalanced matches. The same should apply to skilled survivors against new killers as well, and for the same reasons. The devs have mentioned that this system has been measuring players for months, and we already have established MMRs in the background. So when this thing is turned on, we really should only see good matches that feel balanced as we play. Argument number 2. The MMR system predicts outcomes of matches, but it won't be able to measure player skill. But here's the thing. For the purposes of matchmaking and matches that feel balanced, creating a system that looks at the outcome of a match and the factors that led to that outcome instead of creating an impossible system that looks at every minute detail of the 5 players in a match is a much cleaner idea. Why attempt something impossibly perfect when you can create something that works good enough? Skill then becomes a side note to prediction. It's a factor, but not the deciding one, and you completely avoid the need to create an impossible system that accurately measures skill. Here's an example. If 4 solo survivors go against a killer who gets 2Ks in 100% of their matches, how many survivors will escape? Probably 2, right? The system predicts that the killer will only get 2Ks, so it matches them up against survivors who most likely have a 50% escape rate. The point at which skill comes into play is between the survivors in this situation. The 2 higher skilled survivors are most likely to escape, while the 2 lesser ones won't. And then the player's scores will adjust according to the outcome. Luck and RNG play a factor, but for the most part, this should be how the system works, utilizing skill, but not focusing on it as the primary factor in scoring and matchmaking. If you're worried about overpowered add-ons like Iridescent Head Huntress, the announcement stated that it also measures the degree to which you won or lost a match. I'd imagine that items and add-ons like keys and iridescent hatchets would have an impact on the degree to which someone won or lost. Basically saying, yeah, this game was in the Huntress's favor, so her score will go up by 5 points, but the survivors who escaped gained 10 points, and the sacrificed survivors will lose 5 points. even if their MMR scores were each 1000 at the start of the match, which is why they were matched up in the first place. I'm absolutely sure this is oversimplified, and there's much more going into it, but I just want to get the point across that skill isn't going to be a heavily weighted factor in the prediction process, but it will still play a part, and items and add-ons will affect how the algorithm measures the outcomes between the players. Thus, the focus on whether the system can measure player skill becomes less important than the matches it predicts and how. If you're going to argue this point, remember that the score isn't based on one match where you had a player use up all the resources on the map. It's based on all of your matches, and the degree of success or failure you have in a match will affect your score to a matching degree. And that score is separated between killers. So players who are really good with unorthodox killers like Legion or Demogorgon will still be seen at high MMR rankings. So while you might see the same few killers more often than others, that doesn't mean you won't see the others. This also leads me to something I brought up in another video. If you're worried about only seeing strong killers like Spirit or Freddy at high MMRs, you'll only need to worry about it until devs see how strong survivors actually are and how weak other killers are. Then, we'll start seeing balance changes that will improve the player experiences as a whole, which would in part drive killer changes to bring them all to a similar power level, which would mean that survivors would start seeing varied killers at their MMR rating. As much as many of us hate the Hillbilly changes, those changes fall in line with this thought process. Hillbilly was able to snowball like crazy hard, right? But with these changes, he won't be able to do so as much, leading to longer and more fun matches for the survivors. At most, Hillbilly might be able to down maybe 2 or 3 survivors, depending on how those cooldowns work, but he shouldn't be able to down and slug all 4 survivors, giving the final survivor a chance to escape or rescue the survivors to survive the match. There are a few questions I have in regards to this system though. What about the last second swap that survivors can utilize to swap in items before a killer can change their perks to deal with new information? While killers being locked makes complete sense for scoring and matchmaking purposes, I wonder if this will be applied to survivors as well, since this small tactic can mean a killer like the Hag would be destroyed if they weren't able to change perks to deal with multiple flashlights. Or if the killer wants to equip Franklin's to deal with a key a survivor decides to bring in, but can't because there's no time to add the perk once the survivor swaps it in. If a survivor joins a lobby as a plain character, but switches to another survivor that has a flashlight build, the same outcome will happen if the survivor simply adds a flashlight at the last second. For this reason, a character and loadout lock should be applied to survivors when they join a lobby. This will allow a killer to respond by utilizing perks that are available to them to deal with these items, preventing the survivor from avoiding that possibility. In regards to the MMR score, how the score will work for Swift and solo survivors. Will survivors have a different score if they're often in a Survive with Friends group compared to what their score would be if they entered solo? Considering how they say rankings will work, it may not even be necessary to have different scores, since survivors of relatively equal rank will be matched together. If a Swift group gets together, there's a chance that the average MMR will be used to match against a killer. The more I think about it, I don't think it'll make a huge difference, but in the future of the game, the strength of survivors will come to light, and it'll start to shape the balance of the game. I do wonder how the system will account for items and add-ons though. Flashlights versus Hag are particularly powerful. Object of Obsession on survivors is highly effective against many killers, while Keys and Moris can end matches immediately for players. We'll probably never know the values or how it's calculated, but I hope that the system does account for the more powerful items, and in the end, the system leads the devs to change the stronger and weaker items and add-ons to make them more fun for all players. If anything, the system will also point out which add-ons players are using the most, and which ones are gathering dust, giving the devs a place to start when it comes time to rework some of the worst add-ons. Anyway, I'm actually pretty optimistic for this system because of what it can mean for balance in the game. The things that we've had issues with for years, like Swift groups and the strength of survivors, will probably be adjusted, or the resources they use. In the same thought, overpowered items will probably be adjusted in the future as well, like Keys and Moris. This is a relatively short video, and it's full of just simple initial thoughts and guesses, so who knows what'll actually come from this system. It's started a brush fire of discussion and thoughts on the forums already, which is bringing more light to issues like boring killers, which I have a theory about that I'll share in a future video soon. For now, I'm excited and I want to believe that the system will work well. Let me know what you think of the announcement and what you think will come from it. Like the video if you liked the video, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you disagree with anything I said, definitely leave a comment as well, because this is going to be a really good conversation to have. Until next time, I'll see you in the fog.